Chapter 1: The Illusion of Happiness. The lawns were trimmed to perfection on Sycamore Lane, the hedges sculpted, the mailboxes polished, the flags hung straight for Memorial Day. It was a world that looked, from the outside, like everything was exactly as it should be. Inside, one of the pale yellow colonials, however, Grace Caldwell was preparing for another day of pretending. Grace was 40, but people often guessed younger. Her hair always neat, her smile practiced, her eyes betraying little. She lived in Crestfield, New Jersey, a town where families moved to escape the city and find something like peace. She had 2 children, Emily, 17, clever and sharp-tongued, and Jacob, 12, shy, glued to his laptop and headphones. Her husband, David Caldwell, worked in Manhattan for a corporate law firm. He was home by 8 p.m. most nights, exhausted, distracted, but always with a joke for the kids and a kiss for Grace. Their life, from the outside, was a suburban American success story, but Grace had learned to spot the cracks in facades, even in her own. Their marriage was not unhappy, but it was hollow. Conversations drifted through safe, empty corridors. "How was your day?" "Fine." "What's for dinner?" "Chicken." The silences grew each year, thickening between the lines of their daily routine. This morning, Grace stood at the kitchen window, watching Emily back out of the driveway in her second-hand Toyota. She smiled and waved, automatic. Jacob shuffled in, hair sticking up, not yet fully awake. "Morning, honey," Grace said, putting toast in the toaster. He grunted, already scrolling through his phone, and settled at the counter. David came in next, in a crisp white shirt, tie only half knotted. "I'll be home late," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Big case?" she asked, pouring his coffee. "Always," he replied with a tired smile. He pecked her cheek and grabbed his travel mug, the scent of cologne lingering after he rushed out the door. Grace lingered in the empty kitchen, sipping coffee, feeling the ache of a life that seemed to happen to her rather than with her. By 9, she was at her part-time job at the Crestfield Library, shelving books, smiling at elderly patrons, answering the same questions every week. The library was a quiet refuge, but not a cure. She envied the pages she touched, how stories there had beginnings, middles, endings. Her own life felt stuck in the second act. During lunch break, Grace sat with her friend and co-worker Liz Greenberg, a widow with a blunt tongue and a soft heart. "Any plans for the anniversary?" Liz asked, voice low. Grace glanced at her wedding ring, twisting it unconsciously. "We'll probably order pizza, like last year." Liz snorted, romantic. Grace smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't think David remembers. Sometimes I wonder if either of us does." They sat in silence, the hum of computers and turning pages filling the gap. On the drive home, Grace took the long route through Crestfield's older neighborhoods, admiring the gardens, the kids riding bikes. She remembered when she and David first moved here, hearts full of hope, dreaming of a perfect family. When she got home, the mailbox held only bills and a realtor's flyer, thinking of moving, with a glossy photo of a couple beaming in front of a sold sign. Grace almost laughed. Emily was home by late afternoon, already complaining about AP classes and college applications. "I'm not going to state, Mom. I can do better," she said, voice tight with teenage defiance. Grace nodded absently, feeling the distance between them grow with every conversation. Jacob emerged from his room only for dinner, where he barely spoke, absorbed in the glow of his tablet. That night, after the kids were in bed, Grace sat on the porch swing, the air thick with summer and loneliness. David called to say he was staying late, again. She listened to his voice, flat and distant, and found herself wondering if this was all her life would ever be. She closed her eyes, the illusion of happiness pressing on her like a too-heavy blanket. Somewhere, in the quiet darkness of Crestfield, a siren wailed, a reminder that even perfect places hold secrets and pain. Grace's phone vibrated on the porch rail. A message appeared from an unknown number. "You deserve better. You know it too." The first crack. Grace stared at the message long after the phone screen faded to black. "You deserve better. You know it too." The words burrowed under her skin, gnawing at the part of her she kept hidden, even from herself. She checked the number. No name, no previous messages, just a series of digits. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a prank. But she couldn't shake the way her heart fluttered, as if someone out there really saw her, really understood the quiet desperation she tried so hard to bury. She barely slept that night. Each time she drifted off, she dreamed of running down endless suburban streets, chased by a faceless presence, always searching for something she could never quite name. Morning arrived too early, sunlight painting the kitchen in pale gold. Grace moved through her routines automatically, packing lunches, reminding Jacob to bring his gym shoes, listening to Emily rattle off anxieties about college. But everything felt slightly out of sync, as if she were watching her own life from behind glass. At the library, Liz noticed her distraction immediately. Earth to Grace, what's up? Grace hesitated, then shrugged. Just didn't sleep. Liz eyed her. You and David okay? Grace forced a smile. We're fine, just busy. She wasn't sure why she lied. Maybe because the truth was too messy, too hard to explain, that her marriage wasn't a battlefield but a desert, quiet, sun-bleached, and empty. After work, Grace wandered through the Crestfield Mall pretending to window shop. She watched couples argue softly over dinnerware, mothers herd toddlers, teenagers laugh in packs. She felt invisible, a ghost haunting the life she was supposed to want. On impulse, she stopped at a small cafe and ordered a latte. As she waited, she replayed the message in her mind. Was someone trying to warn her or tempt her? She glanced around. Did anyone look out of place? Did anyone notice her? Nobody did. The barista handed her the coffee with a distracted smile. Grace sat by the window, sipping slowly, letting herself imagine for a moment that she was someone else, someone bold, someone free. Her phone vibrated again. Are you happy, Grace? This time, her pulse spiked. She scanned the cafe, uneasy. The message came from the same number. She typed, "Who is this?" No reply. That evening, David came home late, smelling faintly of whiskey. He dropped his briefcase in the hall, rubbing his temples. Rough day? Grace asked quietly. Every day's rough, he muttered, flopping onto the couch. Emily hovered in the doorway, watching him with wary eyes. Dad, did you see my email about the college tour? David barely looked at her. We'll talk about it later, okay, Em? Emily's mouth twisted. She vanished upstairs, slamming her door behind her. Grace felt a flash of anger, at David, at herself, at the world. She set dinner on the table, but nobody really talked. Jacob ate silently, eyes on his tablet. David scrolled through his phone, barely touching his food. After dinner, Grace stood at the sink, scrubbing a pan so hard her hands hurt. David appeared behind her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. Sorry I'm distant, he said softly. Work's just a lot right now. She turned to face him, searching his tired eyes for something, anything real. I know, she whispered, but it felt like a lie. He kissed her forehead, but the gesture was hollow, more habit than affection. When the kids were asleep, Grace wandered out onto the back porch. The yard was dark and still, the only light a distant porch lamp from a neighbor's house. She unlocked her phone, staring at the unread message. Are you happy, Grace? For the first time, she allowed herself to answer, if only in her mind. No, I'm not happy. I'm tired of pretending. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Willow Park, bench by the fountain. I can help you. Her hands trembled as she read the words. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to delete the message and forget. But another part, a secret, hungry part, wanted desperately to know what would happen if she said yes. Grace stayed awake long into the night, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities, fears, guilt. By morning, she had made up her mind she would go. As Grace left for Willow Park, she caught her own reflection in the hallway mirror. A woman on the verge of breaking, but also, maybe for the first time, a woman about to do something truly unpredictable. Chapter 3. Dreams of Escape. Grace had spent most of her adult life following rules. Wake up early, pack lunches, keep the house clean, never let the neighbors hear an argument. But as she walked toward Willow Park that afternoon, each step felt like breaking a small law of her own life. She noticed how the air tasted fresher than usual, how the sun made even the cracks in the pavement seem golden. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from a strange, dangerous hope. The park was almost empty a weekday afternoon, just a few elderly men playing chess under a gazebo, and a pair of mothers chatting by the swings. Grace made her way to the fountain, scanning the benches. A man sat alone, mid-40s, with a book open in his lap but eyes fixed on the water. She hesitated, then approached. Grace? His voice was gentle, familiar but unplaceable. She nodded, perching awkwardly at the far end of the bench. The man closed his book and turned to face her. "I'm Sam," he said simply. "Thanks for coming." There was an awkward pause. "Do I know you?" Grace asked, studying his face, sharp cheekbones, kind eyes, a tiredness that mirrored her own. Sam smiled, a little sadly. "We met once, a long time ago. High school reunion. I remember you dancing, laughing like nothing in the world could touch you." Grace tried to recall, but the memory was a blur. Why the messages? Why now? He shrugged, looking down. "I've seen you around Crestfield. You look lost, like you're fading into this place. I recognize that look." She bristled. "So you just decided to text me out of the blue?" "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "I know how it sounds, but I couldn't help myself. I thought maybe you needed to know you're not invisible." Grace felt her defenses soften just a little. For a moment, she let herself imagine a life in which someone truly saw her. Sam glanced at his hands. "I've been through it too. The emptiness, the pretending. My marriage ended last year. My ex took our son to Arizona. Most days I barely get out of bed. But I saw you at the library one afternoon. So composed, so quiet. I wanted to tell you it doesn't have to be this way." Grace stared at the water, conflicted. "You have no idea what my life is like." "No," Sam admitted, "but I know what it's like to feel alone while surrounded by people." They sat in silence, the sound of the fountain filling the spaces between words. Grace felt tears prick her eyes, and she blinked them away quickly. "I can't just walk away," she whispered. "I have kids, a marriage, people depend on me." "I know," Sam said quietly, "but when do you get to depend on someone?" Grace looked at him sharply, searching for judgment in his eyes. There was none, only understanding and something else, a longing that scared her. She stood abruptly, wiping her hands on her skirt. "I have to go." Sam rose too. "Grace, you're not alone. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here." She nodded, already backing away, the moment too intense. As she walked home, her mind churned. Was he right? Was her life really nothing more than habit and fear? At home, the world felt grayer, smaller. Emily was on the phone in her room, voice rising in frustrated debate about college applications. Jacob was gaming, oblivious to everything but the screen. David's text flashed on her phone. "Late tonight, don't wait up." Grace made dinner alone, frozen lasagna, salad from a bag, barely tasting a bite. The house echoed with silence, broken only by the clatter of Jacob's fork and Emily's closed bedroom door. After dinner, Grace found herself sitting in her car in the driveway, hands trembling. She replayed Sam's words. "You're not invisible. When do you get to depend on someone?" She wanted to call Liz, to confess everything, but she couldn't bring herself to say it out loud. Instead, she drove through Crestfield's quiet streets, winding past houses where lights glowed in living rooms, where laughter drifted from open windows. Each happy family felt like an accusation. Eventually, she parked near the edge of town, by a small wooded lot where teenagers carved initials into trees and whispered secrets after dark. She sat for a long time, letting the quiet wrap around her, thinking of escape, of running away from everything, from everyone, of starting fresh. But reality pressed back. The kids, the mortgage, the unspoken rules. When she finally returned home, it was after 10. Emily was asleep. Jacob's bedroom glowed blue from his monitor. Grace lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the emptiness. Just after midnight, her phone buzzed. Did you feel it today? That moment when you almost remembered what hope feels like? Grace closed her eyes, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Yes, she had felt it. A flicker of possibility, quickly swallowed by fear. The next morning, David's phone rang before dawn. Grace heard him in the hallway, his voice tense, urgent. When she asked what was wrong, he just muttered, "Work." But when he left for the city, Grace noticed his briefcase was missing, and so was his wedding ring. Chapter 4. The Dinner That Changed Everything. Grace woke early, David's absence a physical ache in the bed beside her. She listened to the sounds of the house, Jacob's faint laughter from his room, Emily banging drawers, the distant drone of a lawnmower outside. The everyday normalcy of it all felt strange after the previous night's discovery. David's wedding ring and briefcase were gone, and he'd left the house before sunrise. She went through the morning routine as if on autopilot, though inside her chest everything churned. She wanted to confront David, demand an explanation, scream, cry, anything. But he was unreachable. Calls went to voicemail, texts read but not answered. At the library, Grace struggled to focus. Liz noticed her agitation at once. "What's going on, Gracie? You look like you've seen a ghost." Grace considered confiding in Liz. Her marriage, the late-night message, David's missing ring, but fear held her tongue. Instead, she muttered, "Just tired. Too much on my mind." After work, she returned home to find a note on the kitchen counter. "Work dinner. Don't wait up. David." Grace stared at the note until the words blurred. She felt both relief and disappointment. Relief because she wouldn't have to pretend everything was normal over dinner. Disappointment because a part of her had hoped, irrationally, that David would walk through the door, look her in the eyes, and say everything she needed to hear. But she was tired of waiting. That evening, she cooked real food, lemon chicken, roasted vegetables. Emily emerged from her room, surprised. "Are we celebrating something?" Emily asked, suspicion in her voice. Grace shook her head. "No, I just wanted us to eat together tonight." Jacob sat quietly, poking at his food. Emily was scrolling through her phone, sighing loudly. The conversation stalled until Grace forced herself to ask, "How are things at school, Em?" Emily shrugged. "Same old. Everyone's obsessed with college apps. Some girls made a spreadsheet to compare acceptance rates. I hate it." Jacob looked up. "Can I eat in my room?" "No, sweetie, not tonight." Grace tried to sound firm, but her voice trembled. Emily set down her fork. "Is something wrong, Mom? You're acting weird." Grace hesitated. She wanted to tell them everything, to scream that she was lost and afraid, that their father was slipping away, that she was slipping away too, but she couldn't. She smiled, lips tight. "I just want us to be together," she said softly. After dinner, Emily retreated upstairs, slamming her door. Jacob lingered for a moment, studying his mother with worried eyes. "Are you okay?" he whispered. Grace nodded, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "I'm okay, Jacob. Just tired." That night, she sat in the dark living room, staring at the glowing screen of her phone. Sam hadn't messaged since their meeting, but she found herself wishing he would. She longed for someone who could see through her masks. David didn't come home that night. His absence was a void, echoing through the house. Grace lay awake, heart pounding, mind spinning stories. Affair, breakdown, secret debts. The possibilities all hurt. She fell into a fitful sleep. Flashback. She was 25 again, standing at the edge of a dance floor. David approached, all confidence and charm, his eyes only for her. He made promises, love, adventure, a life that would never become ordinary. But now their life felt ordinary to the point of suffocation. Grace woke at dawn to the sound of Emily crying in the bathroom. She rushed to find her daughter sitting on the floor, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. "What happened?" Grace asked, kneeling beside her. Emily handed over the phone. It was an email, her first college rejection. "I'm not good enough," Emily sobbed. "You always said I could do anything." "But that's not true. I can't get out of here." Grace held her, stroking her hair, her own heart breaking. "This isn't the end, honey. You're so much stronger than you think." "I just wanted one thing to work out," Emily whispered. Grace felt her own walls cracking. "Me too," she said quietly. They stayed there together, mother and daughter, both aching for something more. Later, as Grace drove Jacob to school, he broke the silence. "Dad was gone when I woke up," Jacob said, voice uncertain. "He had to work early," Grace lied automatically. Jacob stared out the window. "He's gone a lot lately." Grace gripped the steering wheel tightly, guilt and helplessness colliding inside her. Back home, her phone finally buzzed with a new message. "You're not alone, Grace. It's okay to want more. Cess." She read it over and over, the words burrowing into her chest. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete it either. That afternoon, Liz cornered her at the library. "You look like hell, Gracie. Spill." Grace nearly broke down right there, but held herself together. "It's just, everything feels wrong. I can't fix it. I don't even know where to start." Liz squeezed her shoulder. "You don't have to fix it alone." The words lingered. Alone. More than anything, Grace was tired of feeling alone. That evening, David finally came home. He looked drained, older, as if the world weighed heavier on him than it used to. He avoided Grace's gaze, heading straight upstairs. She wanted to follow, demand answers, but fear pinned her to the spot. Instead, she found herself opening her phone, typing out a message to Sam. "I need someone to talk to. Can we meet?" She hesitated, then hit send. As she waited for a reply, the house phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. When she answered, a woman's voice asked quietly, "Is this Grace Caldwell? I think you deserve to know the truth about David." Chapter 5. Old Ghosts and New Lies. The voice on the other end of the phone was trembling, careful, almost apologetic. "Grace, my name is Helen Rivers. I was David's colleague. We worked together at Carlton and Myers." Grace's heart thudded. She clutched the phone tighter, glancing instinctively up the stairs, as if David might overhear, even though he was behind a closed door. Helen continued, "I shouldn't be calling, but I heard things, saw things. I don't know what you already know, but I think you deserve honesty." Grace tried to steady her voice. "I don't know anything. David's been distant. Please, just tell me." A pause. On the other end, a deep breath. "David, he's not the man you think he is, Grace. Something's been going on for months. He's been meeting someone, sometimes at lunch, sometimes after work. I only know because I cared about him once. It's not just business, and it's not just a passing thing. I'm sorry." A numbness spread through Grace's body. "Do you know who?" Helen hesitated. "Her name is Nora. She works for a consulting firm downtown. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I was scared. David can be charming, but also cold, ruthless." Grace's fingers shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. "Thank you, Helen. Thank you." She hung up before her voice broke. She sat in the kitchen, clutching the phone, unable to breathe, staring at nothing as the last light of evening faded from the window. The walls felt like they were closing in. 1,000 images flickered through her mind. David's long hours, the missing ring, the distance in his voice, the too familiar scent of someone else's perfume on his suit weeks ago. Had she always known and refused to admit it? The house was silent. Emily and Jacob were in their rooms. Upstairs, she could hear David's footsteps, the low hum of his voice on a business call, or was it a lie, another conversation with Nora? Grace was so lost in her thoughts she didn't notice her phone vibrating again. A text from Sam. "Of course. Name the place and time. I'll be there." She wanted to reply instantly, to run, to scream, but another message appeared, this one from David. "Going out for a while. Don't wait up. D." Moments later, she heard the front door close quietly. His footsteps faded down the walk. Grace stood motionless, feeling as though she were watching someone else's life. Her hands moved mechanically. She cleared plates, loaded the dishwasher, straightened cushions. Her mind raced in dizzying circles. Emily appeared in the kitchen, her eyes puffy from crying. "Mom, is Dad mad at me? He barely talked to me all week." Grace gathered her daughter in her arms, stroking her hair. "No, honey, it's not you. It's grown-up stuff, I promise." Emily clung to her for a moment, then pulled away, studying her mother's face. "Are you okay?" Grace forced a shaky smile. "I will be." After Emily went to bed, Grace wandered through the dark, silent house, her nerves frayed, mind oscillating between fury and despair. She thought about calling Helen back, demanding details. She thought about confronting David, screaming at him for every betrayal, every secret. But the weight of years pressed on her, years of keeping peace, smoothing over tension, pretending for the sake of the children. Instead, she grabbed her coat, texted Sam, and drove through empty streets to a small 24-hour diner near the highway. Sam was already there, waiting in a back booth, a cup of coffee in his hands. When he saw her, he stood, worry etched in every line of his face. "What happened?" he asked softly as she sat down. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Tears welled up and spilled over, and Sam reached across the table, taking her hand in both of his. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to say it." Grace let the silence hold them for a while. The diner's neon lights painted their faces in soft blues and reds, blurring the boundaries between sorrow and hope. Finally, she found her voice. "He's seeing someone else. Her name is Nora. I think it's been going on for months." Sam squeezed her hand gently. "You didn't deserve this. None of it is your fault." Grace shook her head, barely able to look at him. "I feel so stupid, like I should have known. All the signs were there." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "You did what you had to do to survive. Sometimes loving someone means ignoring the worst parts because you're scared of what happens if you face them. Grace wiped her eyes, finally looking up. What do I do now? Sam's eyes were kind. Whatever you need to. You don't have to stay trapped in this life, Grace. You can choose something different. She nodded, feeling a flicker of strength, a faint pulse of defiance. They talked for over an hour, about everything and nothing, about their children, their regrets, the futures they once dreamed about. For the first time in years, Grace felt truly seen. Eventually, she drove home. The house was dark. David's car wasn't in the driveway. In the hallway, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Red eyes, messy hair, but something new in her face, a spark of resolve. She climbed the stairs and opened David's closet, searching through pockets, drawers, the secret hiding spot she'd once used for birthday presents and love notes. She found nothing but a stack of unopened bills, a crumpled tie, and, tucked in the back, a business card with the name Nora Wallace, senior consultant. As she held the card, footsteps creaked on the porch. David was home. Grace slipped the card into her robe pocket and stepped out onto the landing. David stood in the darkness, his face unreadable, and for the first time in years she asked with terrifying calm, "Who is Nora?" Chapter 6. The Neighbor's Secrets. For a long moment, the hallway was filled with a suffocating silence. Grace's voice still hung in the air, her question slicing through the dark. "Who is Nora?" David set his keys down, his face eerily calm, but his eyes betrayed him. There was fear there, a flash of guilt. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past Grace into the kitchen, turning on the light as if mundane routine could shield him from the truth. Grace followed, clutching the business card in her pocket, so tightly it left marks on her palm. She watched him pour a glass of water, the clink of ice loud in the tense air. "David," she repeated, her voice stronger now. "I know about Nora. I know about the late nights, the missing ring, the secrets. I spoke to someone who works with you." He set the glass down, shoulders stiffening. "You've been checking up on me." "No," Grace said, "but you stopped coming home, you started living a double life, and I'm tired of pretending not to notice." He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. "You don't understand, Grace. It's complicated." "Then explain it to me." Her voice cracked, trembling with anger and pain. David slumped onto a kitchen chair, head in his hands. For a moment he looked smaller, defeated. Finally he spoke. "I met Nora at a client dinner 6 months ago. At first it was harmless, just conversation, someone who listened. You and we haven't really talked in years. Everything in this house is about the kids or the bills or, God, I don't know. I felt invisible. With her I felt seen." Grace felt something inside her shatter. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand why her love, her sacrifices weren't enough. "So you decided to betray your family," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far," David said, voice thick with shame. "I kept telling myself it was nothing, but then I started lying, and every time I tried to stop, I'd find another excuse." He looked up at her, eyes red-rimmed. "I'm sorry, Grace. I really am." She stared at him, searching for the man she'd married and realizing how distant he'd become. "I thought we were in this together," she said quietly, "even when it hurt, even when it was lonely." David stood, moving closer, but she stepped away. "Don't," she warned, voice brittle. They stood like that for a long moment, a gulf between them that neither could cross. Finally, David said, "I'll stay at a hotel tonight. I owe you that much." Grace nodded, unable to trust her own voice. When the door clicked shut, the weight of the last few months pressed on her with crushing force. She slid to the kitchen floor, knees pulled to her chest, letting herself cry for all the years she'd spent patching cracks that would never truly heal. She remembered the early days, weekends at the beach, laughter that felt endless, the time they both got caught in the rain and danced on the lawn, soaking wet and giddy. Where had that gone? When had they stopped seeing each other as people and started playing roles? Mother, father, provider, responsible adult. The house was silent. Eventually, Grace pulled herself up and wandered to the window. The neighbors' homes glowed in the night. In one, she saw Mr. O'Donnell, her neighbor for more than a decade, embrace a woman who wasn't his wife. In another, she glimpsed Mrs. Jenkins drinking alone in front of her TV, her face streaked with tears. It struck Grace. She wasn't alone in her pain. Every house on this street held secrets, some darker, some quieter, but all hidden behind closed doors and painted smiles. The next day was Sunday. Grace didn't sleep. She moved through the house like a ghost, numb, robotic. She watched as Emily and Jacob ate breakfast, the silence between them thick and uncomfortable. Emily broke it first. "Is Dad mad at you? He barely spoke to anyone last night." Grace forced herself to smile. "Dad's just dealing with some things, honey. It's not your fault." Emily's eyes narrowed, picking up on the lie, but she didn't push. That afternoon, Liz called. "Let's go for a walk," she insisted. Grace tried to refuse, but Liz wouldn't take no for an answer. They walked along the river path, autumn leaves swirling at their feet. "David is seeing someone else," Grace finally confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I found out last night. I don't know what to do." Liz stopped, squeezing Grace's hand. "I'm sorry, honey, truly, but you're not the only one. You'd be surprised what goes on behind the doors of Crestfield." Grace shook her head, voice breaking. "I thought we were better than this." Liz's face softened. "No one is better than heartbreak. All any of us can do is survive it." They walked in silence, Grace's mind whirling. When she got home, she found a note taped to the door. David's handwriting, apologizing again, promising to call about the kids. Grace sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, debating whether to call Sam. She wanted comfort, wanted escape. But for once, she also wanted to face the pain instead of running from it. That night, alone in her bed, Grace scrolled through old photos, wedding day smiles, the first Christmas in Crestfield, Emily and Jacob as babies, each image a knife and a bomb. Her phone buzzed. "Sam, I'm here if you need anything, even if it's just to talk." Grace stared at the message, her heart twisting. That night, suddenly headlights swept across the bedroom wall. David's car returning in the middle of the night. Grace watched from the window, heart pounding. But instead of coming inside, David sat alone in the driveway, head in his hands, as if the weight of all his secrets was finally too much to bear. Chapter 7. The Shattered Plan. Grace watched David through the curtains, her breath fogging the glass as she stared into the night. He sat motionless in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, shoulders hunched in a posture of defeat. A part of her ached to go to him, to demand explanations, to scream, to finally unleash the storm of grief and fury that had built inside her. But another part, colder and older, held her in place. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. After nearly an hour, David finally left the car and disappeared down the street, not even glancing back at the house. Grace watched until he was gone, the emptiness of the driveway mirroring the emptiness in her chest. Only then did she allow herself to cry, silently, clutching her own arms, rocking back and forth as if trying to soothe a child. She slept poorly, waking every hour to strange noises, to the soft knock of regret, to dreams of a family that could have been. By dawn, she felt ancient. That morning, Emily and Jacob moved through the house like shadows. They could sense the tension, the way every sound echoed too loudly in the halls. At breakfast, Emily stared into her cereal, her voice so small it was almost lost in the clink of spoons. "Are you and Dad getting a divorce?" Grace looked at her daughter, so young and yet so old. She shook her head, unable to lie. "I don't know, honey. We're just figuring things out." Jacob looked up, his eyes wide and wounded. "Will we have to move?" Grace forced a smile, tears threatening. "No one is going anywhere right now. You have school, your friends, your lives. This is still your home." After the kids left, Grace sat at the kitchen table, staring at the faded tablecloth, at the sunbeam crawling across the surface like a living thing. She felt as though her whole life was about to be swept away by some invisible tide. Her phone buzzed. "Sam, are you okay?" She hesitated, then wrote back, "No, but I want to be. Can we meet?" He replied immediately, "Of course, anywhere, anytime." They met at Willow Park, the same bench by the fountain. Sam looked tired, but there was a kindness in his smile, a gentleness Grace hadn't realized she needed. She sat next to him, shoulders slumped. "Everything's falling apart," she whispered. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to fix her pain. Instead, he listened. She told him everything, about Helen's call, about the affair, about David's confession, about the way she no longer recognized her own life. After a long silence, Sam spoke. "Grace, you have survived so much already. You don't have to carry it all alone. And you don't have to decide everything today." Grace shook her head. I just keep thinking about the kids, about what's best for them, about how I spent years keeping the peace, making everyone else comfortable." Sam looked at her with deep sadness. "What about you? When do you get to be comfortable or happy or free?" They sat together, letting the autumn breeze tug at their hair. For a moment, Grace let herself imagine a future that was different, a future that belonged to her, not just her role as wife or mother. She returned home to a new message from David. "We need to talk. Tonight. I'll come home after work." The rest of the day passed in a haze. She went through the motions: laundry, answering emails, making dinner for the kids, but every movement felt heavy, as if the air itself was weighted with dread. After dinner, she called the children into the living room. "Your dad and I are going to talk tonight," she said gently. "It might get emotional. I want you to know you're both loved, no matter what happens." Emily's lip trembled. "Is this my fault?" Grace hugged her, holding her tight. "No, Em, none of this is your fault." Jacob burrowed into her side. "I don't want things to change." Grace swallowed the lump in her throat. "Me neither, sweetie. But sometimes change is how we heal." David came home just before sunset. He looked older, grayer, a man forced to face the consequences of his own choices. He asked the kids for a moment alone. They sat at the kitchen table, David, hands folded, Grace, face drawn but determined. "I've talked to Nora," David began. "It's over. I told her I can't keep lying to my family, that I have to try to fix things here, if that's possible." Grace's anger flared. "You can't just put everything back together, David. You broke something real. It wasn't just a fling. It was months of secrets and lies. And I'm tired. So tired of patching things that just keep breaking." David nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. I don't expect forgiveness, not right away. I want to be here. For the kids, for you, if you'll let me." Grace looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just her husband, but a man terrified of losing his family. She felt pity and anger and an unexpected thread of hope, but the trust was gone, shattered like glass. "I need time," she said quietly, "and I need honesty. From now on, no more secrets." David agreed, voice shaking. "I promise." They sat in heavy silence, the dusk deepening around them. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, Grace wandered through the darkened house. She stopped at the window, looking out into the quiet street. The world outside seemed unchanged, but she knew everything inside had shifted. Her phone buzzed. Another message, this one anonymous. "Not all secrets are yours to keep. Some are waiting to be found." Grace's heart lurched. She realized with a cold clarity that the story wasn't finished, that her family's wounds were only part of a deeper current running through Crestfield, one that would soon force her to confront the neighborhood's darkest truths. A siren wailed in the distance, drawing closer. Red and blue lights flashed across the windows as a police car stopped in front of the O'Donnell's house. Grace watched, frozen, as officers rushed up the porch. Her troubles, she realized, were about to become everyone's. Chapter 8. The Quiet Aftermath. The police lights threw wild colors across Grace's living room ceiling as she watched from behind her curtains, heart pounding. For the first time in weeks, her own family drama felt almost small, one broken home among many, a single thread in the complicated tapestry of Crestfield's secrets. But as the officers moved swiftly up the O'Donnell's porch, a cold wave of dread washed over her. What if the pain that haunted her family was just a shadow of something far darker? She watched as the door across the street flew open and Mrs. O'Donnell emerged, screaming, a sound so raw it cut through the stillness of the night. The police pushed past her, and within moments an ambulance arrived, lights blazing. Neighbors clustered on lawns in bathrobes and slippers, eyes wide, voices hushed. Grace felt the weight of every secret, every unspoken truth, pressing in on all sides. As she stood there, David appeared behind her, pale and shaken. "What's happening?" he asked, but his voice was thin, the bravado gone. "I don't know," Grace whispered, "but I think it's more than just us, David. I think everyone's been living behind a lie." He put a trembling hand on her shoulder. For a moment, they stood together, two wounded people in a house full of ghosts. By morning, the news was everywhere. Mr. O'Donnell had been taken away in handcuffs, accused of embezzlement and fraud. Crestfield's perfect surface had cracked wide open, spilling secrets onto the street for all to see. Grace watched it unfold with a numb sort of clarity. She realized how many of her neighbors, like her, had built their lives on silence, on things left unsaid and wounds never healed. The Caldwell family was changed, too. David stayed home that day, sitting at the kitchen table with the children, answering their questions as best he could. Emily was angry, withdrawn, her trust shattered. Jacob was silent, drawing monsters in his notebook, creatures with too many eyes and not enough faces. That afternoon, Grace met Liz at the cafe. Her friend was already there, sipping black coffee and reading the headlines. "It's a mess," Liz muttered. "You see it now, don't you? No one is safe from pain. Even the perfect ones." Grace nodded. "We all wear masks, but sometimes they slip." They sat in silence for a while, watching as the world tried to put itself back together. Liz reached out, squeezed Grace's hand. "What are you going to do?" she asked gently. Grace looked out the window, thinking of the years she'd spent keeping the peace, hiding her doubts, pretending everything was fine. "I'm going to stop pretending," she said, surprising herself. "No more secrets. Not from the kids, not from David, not from myself." Liz smiled, sad and proud all at once. "It's not easy, but it's the only way through." Grace went home to find David in the backyard, raking leaves, lost in thought. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like an intruder in her own life. She joined him, working side by side, the silence between them full of things left unsaid, but also, perhaps, the possibility of new beginnings. That night, Grace called a family meeting in the living room. She told Emily and Jacob the truth about her own fears, about David's mistakes, about how even grown-ups get lost sometimes. There were tears and anger and a lot of silence, but there was also a kind of release, a fragile hope. After the kids went to bed, Grace and David sat together. "Do you still love me?" David asked quietly. Grace thought about it for a long time. "I don't know yet," she answered honestly, "but I know I want to try. I want to be real, David. I want a life that's real, even if it hurts." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "So do I." They stayed that way for a long while, two wounded souls learning to speak again. 1 year later, the Caldwell family is smaller but stronger. Grace has started working full-time at the library, taking classes at night. Emily has found a college that fits. Jacob is seeing a counselor. David and Grace are rebuilding, brick by brick, not perfectly, but honestly. On some evenings, Grace still walks Crestfield's streets, looking at the houses and wondering what stories play out behind their doors. She knows now that no family is untouched by secrets, no life truly perfect. But in the quiet aftermath of everything, she has found a kind of peace, not in pretending, but in truth. Because sometimes survival isn't about mending what's broken. Sometimes it's about finding the courage to live honestly in a world built on secrets.